You've probably heard of the roguelike genre before. Wikipedia classifies roguelike as a subgenre of role-playing computer games traditionally characterized by a dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, grid-based movement, and permanent death of the player character. Oh wait, hang a second. The exact definition of a roguelike game remains a point of debate in the video game community. A Berlin interpretation drafted in 2008 defined a number of high and low value factors that distinguish the pure roguelike games, Rogue, NetHack, and Angband, from edge cases like Diablo. To distinguish these from the traditional roguelikes, such games may be referred to as roguelite or roguelike-like? What the fuck is this? Who the fuck says roguelike-like? However, a more modern definition could be any game where you have to complete some kind of objective using randomized resources in procedurally randomized levels, while dying causes you to have to start over from the beginning, which also randomizes your resources and levels again. So basically any game with procedural generation and permadeath. However, I'm here to argue that both this genre definition and the name itself are actually inaccurate and unintuitive, and must change, as to not do that could actually lead to people harming the design of their games. The term roguelike came from Usenet newsgroups around 1993. Debate among users of these groups ensued to try to find an encapsulating term that described the common elements, starting with rec.games.dungeon, but after 3 weeks of discussion, 3 weeks, rec.games.roguelike was picked as the least of all available evils? Like it's the least bad one? What? Least available evils. The first problem I have with the term roguelike is the same problem I have with all genres named after specific games. That is that if you don't know that game, the term is meaningless to you, in addition to not telling you anything about the mechanics of the original game either. Like, you can't just call genres after whatever games did them first. Even Doom clones were eventually renamed to first-person shooters, which is far more descriptive. So what kind of game is Rogue? And what is its genre? Rogue is a turn-based tactical dungeon crawler. The point of the game is that you are stuck in a dungeon which completely alters itself, and you are trying to get some amulet or something while you fight monsters, level up, and collect items in order to survive and make it to the end. You also collect different colors of potions and differently named spell scrolls, and every time you play, their effects are randomized. So you have to take risks by either using these items on enemies or yourself and hope that they harm enemies and help you. Of course, after you've discovered the effect of a certain item, it doesn't change until you die. What gameplay elements explicitly define a roguelike game that remains a point of debate within the video game community. I wonder why. There is a broad agreement that roguelike games incorporate gameplay elements popularized by the text-based game Rogue. No, seriously? You're pulling my leg here. At the International Roguelike Development Conference 2008, held in Berlin, Germany, players and developers established a definition for roguelike known as the Berlin interpretation. Here we go. The Berlin interpretation set out a set of high value and low value factors, basing these lists on 5 canon roguelike games. Canon! There's a canon apparently. Adam, Angband, Linley's Dungeon Crawl, NetHack, and the Rogue. So these games are all like Rogue. These games are all like Rogue, what? So, you're using 5 games, like 4 of which are not Rogue, to define what is Rogue. What's a game like Rogue? But isn't a game like Rogue just a game like Rogue? What are you talking about? The interpretation was designed to determine how roguelike a game is, noting that missing a factor does not eliminate a game from being a roguelike. Nor does possessing a feature make a game roguelike. It just needs to be a little bit like it, and then it's like it. Brilliant! Well, Berlin, they're so smart over in Berlin. Finally, Rogue was inspired by Dungeons & Dragons, which is why it shares the turn-based tactical combat and dungeon crawling aspects of that game. So really, Rogue has more in common with D&D than it has with other so-called roguelikes, like Slay the Spire, Hades, and Rogue Legacy. Meanwhile, these games have plenty of other genres they belong to. Slay the Spire is a turn-based card game, Hades is an action hack and slash, and Rogue Legacy is like Hades but is 2D and adds platforming. Also, if you think about it, D&D is also a roguelike. as it has procedural generation and permadeath. First off, the content in D&D could technically be infinite as long as your DM keeps creating new dungeons. And for permadeath, if a player dies in D&D, they are dead. Sure, sometimes they can be revived, but what if the whole party dies? That's game over. Adventure finished. You start over. Good day, sir. Then there are games like Wizardry and Dungeons & Dragons Eye of the Beholder. These kinds of games have been classified as belonging to the dungeon crawler genre. Even though, just like Rogue, these games are about getting through a dungeon, feature permadeath, turn-based combat, and even have food rations which prevent the player from farming EXP and forcing them to keep going deeper into the dungeon. Of course, the reason that these games are so similar is once again because they were inspired by D&D, just like Rogue. So why are these games arbitrarily excluded from the roguelike genre? So again, doesn't it make D&D a roguelike? Or should we rename all of these games to D&D likes? Side note, while editing, I also noticed that D&D actually has most of the factors of the Berlin interpretation, in addition to the permadeath and procedural generation, like turn-based combat, dungeons, hack and slash, resource management, emergent gameplay, magical items which need to be identified, and so on. Of course, the reason D&D has all of these factors is because Rogue was inspired by D&D, like it basically copied these mechanics from it. Further proving how stupid the roguelike genre and the Berlin interpretation are. Like, what the fuck is going on with mainstream game design theory that these people are having entire conferences just to come up with all of this useless bullshit? Of course, I'm not actually proposing that, as I don't think these mechanics belong to a genre or that roguelike even is a genre. However, I do think that a lot of these games people call roguelikes share a dynamic, which is the constant challenge of risk assessment. If you think about it, that's really what these games are all about. When you play Rogue, it is vital that you discover the effects of potions. But finding a safe moment to do so may be tricky. Sometimes you might be in the fight for your life with a monster, with your only way out being throwing a random potion at the enemy, hoping it harms instead of heals. Slay the Spire works the same way. Sure, you could play it safe and avoid all the elites, but then you won't get as many relics. In these games, being careful can get you far, but winning requires you to take big risks. In that sense, procedural generation and permadeath don't make the genre as much as they enhance it, as the randomness adds uncertainty and the permadeath adds higher stakes, both of which increase the tension, making the risks you take more rewarding when they pay off. Also, there's the concept of the run, a playthrough where you get just the right RNG to succeed, which can sometimes make these games feel rather arbitrary. Although this is also a big part of the fun, as the promise of getting just the right combination of items for some overpowered combo is a big reason to keep playing. I guess this is why these games are so addictive, as it has the inconsistent win effect Skinner boxes and gambling also exploit. Even if I don't think Rogue is that similar to these modern games, that is only because they've added so many other features that they've kind of created their own subgenre. There's also the issue that people call these newer games roguelite, because they have progression mechanics that may make it easier to beat them than the old school roguelikes, which were less forgiving, but I call bullshit on that, as adding progression to a game doesn't always make it easier. Slay the Spire, for example, lets you unlock new cards and relics, but they don't automatically make you stronger. Also, these newer games have more challenges for you even after the main ending, which far outclass that of Rogue's only challenge in terms of difficulty. So to say that these games are more casual compared to Rogue is just insulting. Now that that's done, let's talk about why procedural generation and permadeath aren't part of any one genre. John Harris of Games at Watch exemplified this by using these criteria to numerically score some seemingly roguelike games. Numerically score them. Linley's Dungeon Crawl and NetHack scored highest, earning 57.5 points of 60 available based on the interpretation. So wait. Rogue scored lower than two of the other games in determining how much they were like Rogue. What the fuck are you talking about? Doesn't that just mean that that's not a roguelike then? That's an Adam Angband Linley's Dungeon Crawl NetHack roguelike. Any game that's like these 5 games is a roguelike, but only Rogue is actually lower than some of the other ones. You see the problem here? These people are what the fuck? While Toe Jam and Earl and Diablo, games commonly compared to roguelikes, earned only about half the points. Yeah, why not? Seriously? Like Toe Jam and Earl, that's like basically the same game. Except I guess Toe Jam and Earl is an action game. You know, that's it, right? Like, it's like, oh, it's a different action game. You know, like, action and turn-based are different genres. You know, those are actual genres. Maybe you should, like, you know, label these games towards those genres, you know, like turn-based, not turn-based. That would be a good idea. Instead of, like, doing this stupid points thing, you know, picking out 5 random games and then making a whole point system to determine whether or not a game is like these other 5 games. This is the dumbest shit. You know, why don't I just come up with a Toe Jam and Earl-like, and then I give Rogue like 20 points? Why is Toe Jam and Earl-like not a game genre then, huh? Like, what are you talking about? This is such elitist bullshit. Procedural generation isn't a genre-defining mechanic. It is a tool in the designer's toolbox, used for content creation. A game that uses a lot of procedurally generated content is going for a breadth of content, while a game that uses next to none is going for quality of content. It's the difference between quality and quantity. Even a game like Rogue Legacy doesn't have true procedurally generated content, as you'll see the same rooms repeated over and over, just in different positions with different enemies and loot. The game uses random dungeon generation to increase replayability. Games may include predetermined levels such as a town level common to the Moria family, where the player can buy and sell equipment, but these are considered to reduce the randomness set by the Berlin interpretation. Sorry, your game is too well designed. It's not random enough. This random generation is nearly always based on some procedural generation approach rather than true randomness. No. Procedural generation uses a set rules defined by the game developers to seed the generation of the dungeon, generally to assert that each level of the dungeon can be completed by the player without special equipment. Well, I hope so. Games like Minecraft and Diablo also use procedurally generated levels, but instead of using them to add to the challenge of making the player work with what they're given, these games use it to add more variety to the world and cater more to the explorative aspects of the games. Besides, both Minecraft and Diablo have hardcore modes where dying equals permanent loss of your character or access to the server, which means that both these games technically qualify as roguelikes. This again shows how easy it is to qualify for this genre title. If simply changing a game's difficulty mode changes its genre, then that genre has something wrong with it. That's a good segue into the next section, as Permadeath is really nothing more than a difficulty setting. The game uses Permadeath. Once a character dies, the player must begin a new game known as a run, which will regenerate the game's levels anew due to procedural generation. A save game feature will only provide suspension of gameplay and not a limitless recoverable state. The stored session delete upon the resumption of the character death. Plays conserve this by backing up stored game data. And like this is usually considered cheating. No. The developers of Rogue introduced the Permadeath feature after introducing a save function, finding that players were repeatedly loading save games to achieve the best results. This other approach to Permadeath not as means to make the game more painful or difficult, but to put weight on every decision the player made, and to create a more immersive experience. Now sure, that's all fine, but that's a problem that they solved with a feature. But now they're saying that that feature that was used to solve a problem is part of the genre. Like, what are we talking about? It's just a solution to solve a game design problem. And it's like, oh no, it's part of the genre now. Just like procedural generation, Permadeath is a tool in the designer's toolbox, which any game can make use of if a designer chooses to use it. It allows the designer to tune how difficult their game is. Okay, so when a player makes mistakes, a designer has a couple of choices when it comes to punishing the player. This punishment usually comes in 2 forms, a loss of progress or a loss of resources. How much of these two a player loses when making mistakes defines how punishing the game feels, which players usually experience as a feeling of difficulty. It may surprise you to hear that most games use both of these. You may think that a game like Mega Man only uses a loss of progress, as dying results in being sent back. However, Mega Man's health and lives also count as resources. When Mega Man gets hit, he loses his health resource, while also being pushed back a little, which can lead to death when falling down a pit. This is somewhat forgiving as it allows Mega Man to survive a few hits before being punished more severely. When he loses all his health, he gets sent back to the last checkpoint, while also losing his life resource. If he dies while out of lives, he's punished more severely by being kicked out of the level, equaling more progress loss. Of course, there are also games that only use one of the two. Kirby's Epic Yarn punishes the player with a loss of resources, but otherwise just puts them back on the stage. This will feel very generous if your only goal is getting to the end of the stage, but for players who want to use the resources, it equals having to spend more time gathering more of that resource. Dark Souls takes the player's progress, souls and humanity, and if they die again before recovering their souls, they lose those too. This gives the player a chance to avoid the loss of resources. Additionally, it has the Ring of Life protection for people who want a less punishing experience. Ironically, there are also games where Permadeath only affects resources and not progress. In Fire Emblem, XCOM and even Pokemon Nuzlocke, your party members can die permanently. But this doesn't affect your progress in the game, only your chance to beat it as your party members are your resources. Pokemon Nuzlocke also highlight how any game can have permadeath if the player decides to enforce it themselves. How can a mechanic that's so easily added be the representation of genre? Finally, the game that has the most well-designed punishment system is Wario Land 3. In this game, Wario doesn't have health and he can't die. Instead, when he gets hit, he gains some kind of status, which restricts movement in some way. Like when he gets hit by this enemy while climbing his ladder, he gets cut in half, making him fall off the ladder. But otherwise, he's free to try again. This means that climbing the ladder has to be done perfectly, but failing to do so isn't that punishing. This is the opposite of Mega Man, where getting hit while on the ladder just takes some health, allowing the player to tank the hit, which is more forgiving in a moment, but more punishing if the lost health results in dying on the boss. This is a big problem in most older games, where a player would have to retry challenges they already beat, just to get another chance at the hard part. Wario Land fixes that by being more challenging in the moment, while still giving the sense that the game is not that hard. Another great example is when Wario needs to climb this palace, but there are zombies which in a single hit turn Wario into a zombie, which means that when he jumps he falls through semi-solid platforms, forcing him to drop all the way down to retry the climb. The interesting thing is that in earlier levels, turning into a zombie was necessary in order to solve puzzles. Wario Land 3 is full of these transformations, which are a benefit in some situations and a burden in others. Finally, there are the boss fights. In most of these, defeating the boss is rather easy, as they only take a few hits, but if Wario gets hit just once, he has to retry. Take this boss for example. Wario just needs to hit the barrels he's standing on 3 times, which is rather easy, but if Wario is hit even a single time, he turns into Spring Wario, and is forced to jump up the semi-solids to the top of the screen, where he gets stuck. The only way out is through the door, at which point he needs to walk back to the boss room where the fight has been reset. This creates a very volatile fight where victory and loss are both very close at all times. Designing your game like this is actually more fun, as defeating a boss after getting hit a lot doesn't feel very good, but doing so without getting hit at all feels great. A game where getting hit is inevitable feels a lot more sloppy than a game which is designed so tightly that not getting hit is not only more feasible, but encouraged. Jump King and Getting Over It are also good examples of games that exclusively use the loss of progress as punishment. Whoa, I kind of got carried away there explaining game design concepts. But my point is that crediting procedural generation and permadeath to a single genre is a mistake, as it limits your creativity. In general, it is a mistake for any game designer to pick a genre for their game first and then put in all the mechanics they think belong to that genre. Make your game first, put whatever mechanics in it you think will make your game better, and then think about which genres your game fits in. Genres exist to talk about games, not as a blueprint to follow or a corner to stuff them into. See my video on why games have multiple genres if you want to know more about that. So, then how should we call games that have been classified as roguelikes up to this point? First, I think it's better to look at the other genres a game can fit into, like platformer, card game, and turn-based tactics game. But I do think that these games have something in common, and not that they are like Rogue, but that they are about weighing risks versus rewards. So risk assessment games would be a more descriptive and helpful term to apply to them. So Rogue Legacy would be an action combat platform risk assessment game, for example, to give a rough genre description. To end this video, I'd like to notify you that this subject was originally going to be part of a larger video, where I debunk the myths surrounding the differences between Western and Japanese RPGs. Since Rogue was inspired by D&D, I had to explain that Rogue did not count as an RPG, because it did not have the role-playing D&D incorporated. It also allowed me to go more in depth on the game design behind punishment mechanics and content generation, and it also makes the other videos shorter. Anyway, thanks for watching, and subscribe for more videos on game design. Or stick around to watch me deconstruct and make fun of the Wikipedia page on roguelikes some more. The game is turn-based. Oh, fuck off. Give the players much time as needed to make a decision. Yeah, okay. But aren't action games like pretty, like you have to make split-second decisions? Are kind of difficult, Action, advanced-based, and passive time. Like they're like, oh yeah, it needs to be turn-based so players have more time to react. Okay, but doesn't that make the game more easy? Like isn't making action like more hardcore? Because that's what these people are like. They're like, oh man, these modern, they're roguelites. Rogue Legacy, that's a roguelite because it's too casual. Okay, but isn't turn-based like easier than, like what are you talking about? Like Slay the Spire is turn-based. That's also apparently a roguelite. Why are you being such dicks about this? Why can Toe Jam and Roll be like really fucking hardcore, but also be action? Why are you being like so elitist? The game is non-modal, in that every action should be available to the player regardless of where they are in the game. The interpretation knows its shops like an aimment to break this non-modal. So one of the games breaks one of their main rules. What the fuck is non-modal? Like you're not allowed to unlock more things? You're not allowed to have like unlocks? Why not? What is this? Like this is meaningless. Like you can't like unlock a double jump or something. Like is that it? It's so pointless. It's arbitrary. The game has a degree of complexity due to the number of different game systems in place that allow the player to complete certain goals in multiple ways. Oh, you mean like depths? Like I just call it depths. And some people just call it depth or dynamic gameplay. Creating emergent gameplay, because using the word depth is too hard. Okay, so your game has depth. Okay, is that part of the genre? For example, to get through a locked door, the player may attempt to pick the lock, kick it down, burn down the door. None of this happens in Rogue. Guess that's why they lost points. Or even tunnel around it. Yeah, Rogue didn't have as much depth, so it's losing points. Depending on their current situation, inventory and common phrase associated with NetHack is the dev team thinks of everything. Okay, that's NetHack though, but that's not Rogue. So why are we not calling it a NetHack like then? And then the developers seem to have anticipated every possible combination of actions that a player may attempt to try in their gameplay strategy. That's usually done through testing. Because games like they get play tested and then the play testers figure those things out and then the developers build it in. It's not magic. It's not like rocket science. It's called testing. Such as using gloves to protect one's character while wielding the corpse of a cockatrice as a weapon to petrify enemies by its touch. So if you don't have all that, you're not a roguelike. Sorry, but that's a little bit too... You're a little bit too shallow. You need to be at least this deep. The player must use resource management to survive. Well, yeah. That's just the risk assessment. Items that help sustain the player, such as food and healing items, are in limited supply. And the player must figure out how to use these most advantageously to survive in a dungeon. Okay. So you're in a dungeon and you're surviving. Most games have this. Health is a resource. Like ammo is a resource. Like most games do this already. Stamina the game. Okay, it's most games have resources. Oh, but this one has food. And it works like a clock. Like limiting, like imposing some type of deadline or limitation. Okay, now that's nice, increasing the tension, but it's a resource. Yeah, it's a mechanic. What are you talking about? The game is focused on hack and slash based gameplay. Oh yeah, because Rogue is really hack and slash, because you just run into enemies and then they die. But the goal is to kill many monsters and where the other peaceful options do not exist. Okay, but you have emergent gameplay, which means many options, but then you need to kill everything. You're not allowed to talk your way out of things. But you need to have a lot of options, but not the option of like discussion. That is not allowed. You need to be killing everything. Okay. The game requires the player to explore the map and discover the purpose of unidentified items. Here we go. But this is in Toe Jam and Roll. Like with the presents. So like, it's all these things, like, oh, these major things. But it's all arbitrary. These are all choices like a designer can make to put in their game. These are all like mechanics. It doesn't make it like a different genre suddenly. Oh, and then the low value factors. There's low value factors. These only give half points. The game is based on controlling only a single character out one playthrough. Oh, okay, so you're not allowed... No, that Toe Jam and Roll? Sorry, but you're multiplayer. That's like a really cool feature that could improve a game. Have an optional multiplayer. But nah, it's not allowed. What's that? You have a party of characters? Sorry, but you're not... but it's only low factor. so you don't lose that many points. A bunch of fucking dicks, man. Monsters have behavior that's similar to the player characters, so the ability to pick up items and use them. Okay. Why? Who cares? The game aimed to provide a tactical chance and may require players to play through several times to learn appropriate tactics for survival. No other games has that. Does the game need to be played on a computer too? The game is presented using ACI characters in a tile-based map. You don't know what it is? That's this. These graphics. So if your game does not have these graphics, it's not a roguelike. You know, games need to keep using old fucking outdated graphics just to be considered a roguelike. This is why this is so stupid. It's like, you can't make new things. You can't change things. Everything has to be exactly the same, because otherwise it's not a roguelike. You know, I don't think I want to make roguelikes. I think those games are stupid. I think I'm going to make a game that's just good. You know, and maybe shares like a mechanic or two with Rogue, you know? Like, fuck your definitions. The game involves exploring dungeons which are made up of rooms and connecting corridors. Oh, really? A dungeon? I've never seen a dungeon in a video game. Is Dungeons and Dragons a roguelike now? Well, according to my video, yeah. You know, if you're using these stupid rules. Some games may have open areas or natural features, such as rivers. Though these are considered against the Berlin interpretation. The rivers are against the Berlin interpretation. You're not allowed to have rivers. My game has rivers. Get the fuck out of here. You're dead to me. Anyone who puts rivers into the game should be put in a box and thrown into the river. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, it needs to be inside. Oh, the sun. The game presents the status of the player in the game through numbers on the game screen interface. Oh well, thanks. It has a UI. This is so bad. Though this is not addressed by the Berlin interpretation. Roguelikes are generally single-player games. Yes, it is. One character, right? And it's different, I guess. On multi-user systems, leaderboards are often shared between players. Who cares about the fucking leaderboards? Some roguelikes allow traces of former player characters to appear in later game sessions in the form of ghosts or grave marking. That's Dark Souls. They're describing Dark Souls now. Some games such as NetHack even have the player's former characters reappear as enemies within the dungeon. Okay, that's Zombie U. Multiplayer turn-based derivatives such as Tomnet, okay, system player online. You know, like, these are all just mechanics. You know, this is my point throughout the whole thing. Is, you know, these are all just mechanics. And, you know, like, this is why I say games have multiple genres. Roguelites and procedural dead labyrinths. With computers and video game consoles capable of more advanced graphics and gameplay, numerous games have emerged that are loosely based on the classic roguelike design, but diverge in one or more features. Oh no, people are making games that are new and different. Why? You know, I'm a developer. Let's say I'm a developer and I want to make a roguelike. Why would I make the same game? Why make the same game twice? I need to make the game exactly like Rogue in order to be a roguelike? Why are we making the same games twice?
Wouldn't it have been easier to, like, make the same game once instead of, make the same game twice or something?
Just make new games that are different. Sorry, your game's too different. It's too new. It's also, like, way better and cooler. And, like, more fun. And you get more play hours out of it. So it's not like Rogue. And therefore it's bad. And I don't like things that are different. Many of these games use the concept of procedurally generated maps in Permadeath, while moving away from tile-based movement and turn-based gameplay. Oh well, oh no, the humanity. Often using another gameplay genre such as action games or platformers. Oh no! Other titles deriving from roguelike games are based on the observation that the traditional roguelikes are difficult with the steep learning curve. Oh no, games have better learning curves now! Game design has progressed to a point where a game has a simpler learning curve. Oh no. Oh no, our games aren't like badly designed anymore. No. Players nowadays are casual and not hardcore hardcore like my we used to be in the 80s. Oh my god. And the player may never complete these games over numerous play sessions. Yo, making these titles difficult to sell to a broader audience. Oh no, these new games would include elements to reduce the difficulties to draw in larger audience. Oh no, these games appeal to more than just fucking elitist assholes. Oh no. The No, not the needs of the many. Many games with some of the Berlin interpretation elements call themselves roguelike, but bear little resemblance to the original Rogue, causing confusion and dilution of the term. Oh no, not this, because the term is so bad. Least of all available evils. But now the term that was the least of all available evils, is being diluted. A tragedy. A Greek tragedy we got on our hands. Romeo and Juliet, nothing compared to this. Some players of the Berlin interpretation. If you're a player of the Berlin interpretation, you should probably be dragged down into the street and shot. Roguelikes dislike the dilution of the term. They disliked believing that in the 1990s and 2000s the term roguelike served well to distinguish games that forewent aesthetics. The focus on depth of gameplay from games more comparable to interactive movies. What are you talking about? Is Abyss Odyssey an interactive movie? What, because it has graphics? No, it needs to have like letters in order to show the enemies in the game. Particularly games that incorporate real-time gameplay elements, which tend to reduce the game's complexity. What the fuck are you talking about? Rogue is not that complex. It's actually quite simplistic. Especially compared to games we got nowadays, dude. As such, the term roguelite or roguelike-like has been used by some to distinguish these games. No one is using roguelike-like. You're just making up even more bullshit. That possess some but not all of the Berlin interpretation features from those exactly meet the Berlin roguelike definition. Berlin can go straight to hell, man. Just fuck off. The phrase procedural death labyrinth. Make up another bullshit term. Good. This is useful. Procedural death labyrinth. Isn't that Rogue? Isn't Rogue a procedural death labyrinth? Has also been applied to such games, as they retain the notion of permanent and random level generation, but lack the other high-value factors normally associated with roguelike games. This sounds like Rogue, though. Like, you know how many times I died in Rogue while playing it for this video? It was procedural, it was a labyrinth. So what are you talking about? These people are just such turds. Roguelites favor short gameplay runs with victory conditions, including some traditional roguelikes that can be played indefinitely. All these games can be played indefinitely. What are you talking about? The shortness of a single gameplay run in roguelites, they're not short. What the fuck are you talking about? Can motivate players to continually replay the game in the hopes of reaching completion. Make replayability a high-value factor in these type of games. Oh no, replayability. Use gamer further identified games to consider edge cases of being roguelikes or roguelites as they are inspired by Rogue, and that stray a bit further from the genre. It's not a genre, dude. You're talking shit. But still manage to scratch the same itch as a great roguelike. That it's a roguelike. If it's then it's the same genre. It does the same thing. Fuck you. Go fuck off. These include games such as Diablo series, Toe Jam and All, Dwarf Fortress. The latter of which retains a classic ACI art approach. Oh, but it didn't get enough points though, still. It lost out a lot of points. Because it has rivers in it. Oh my god. Richard C. Moss alternatively suggested the term roguelike is less necessarily about any specific genre definition, instead the idea that games can be deep, inventive, challenging, and endlessly compelling experiences through their rules and their systems alone. That sentence doesn't make sense. It's not about any genre. I know, that's my point. But what is this? Oh, games can be deep, inventive. I know, everyone knows this. Any game of any genre can be deep and inventive. You're all just sucking your own cocks and sniffing your own farts. Fuck these people's subgenres within roguelikes. Roguelike is the subgenre, dude. That is the subgenre. You are the subgenre. Like platform games and action games are not beneath roguelikes. Fuck you assholes. Oh my god, another type of roguelike subgenre is the roguelike deck builder. Oh, what's that? Some games that are permadeath and procedural generation also have are also card games? Incredible. Man, it's almost as if games have multiple genres or something. But they can't explain this with their stupid bullshit like Berlin interpretation. So there must be something wrong with these games. That's it. You know, it's these new games that are wrong. Not my interpretation. My interpretation is flawless. Oh my god. This is making my game so hard. You know, like people, you know what? People have made up a new genre. You know what they call them? Wario likes. You know, because we had all these Wario games like Wario Land 1, 2, 3, 4, Wario World, and then they didn't exist. You know, back then we didn't have Wario like, but then we had Pizza Tower. And now Anthem Blast, and people are like, oh man, Pizza Tower is so good, it should have its own genre. We can't have games just be part of old genres that already exist. Every game that is really good and that has a bunch of people like take inspiration from needs its own genre. We can't just reuse like the same genres like platformer. Pizza Tower isn't a platformer. It's a Wario-like. And Wario Land 1 through like 6 are also not platformers. They were also Wario-likes. And Super Mario Land is also not a platformer. It's a Super Mario-like. But Wario Land 3 was also a Mario-like, but then became a Wario-like when like more games were made in the Wario Land series. And then can we just like decide? Can we just like make a deal here? If anyone ever comes up with a genre which contains the word of a game, like is named after a game or has the word like in it, can we just like drop a brick on those people's toes? Can we just shut them up? Can we like put him like in like the shut up room for like an hour? Like, please stop. You're making my job so fucking hard. I can't keep making these videos. This is going on for. I can't make that many videos. Just stop. This is it. This is the end. This is the point where I try to draw the line. Stop with the bullshit like genres. God damn it. So here I am in the talk section of the Wikipedia page on roguelike, and most of this is just like source things, like things don't have sources, like grammar improvements, like making things easier to read. But then we got questions like this: does roguelike really exist or just bad taxonomy? I think it shows lack of clarity and creativity to call any game something like. We don't call fantasy RPG Dragon Age like or sci-fi RPG Mass Effect like. So roguelike should fall either to platform or casual games if it doesn't have anything unique but lack of save feature. So William, like still asking a really good question, right? So you've got an answer from Mabel. Video game genres are often based on similarities to other video games like Doom clone, Grand Theft Auto clone, Metroidvania, and Breakout clone. Not very good answer. Like just pointing at some other things that do the same thing. This is how video game culture works. You can go and try to create a unique word for roguelikes. Apps see if it catches on, but language is purely cultural, so good luck. We don't name things here on Wikipedia. That's not our job. Now that's technically true. Wikipedia, I know it's on facts, and like the fact that Berlin interpretation exists, it's not their fault. Like it's just, it's more like it's like they're categorizing, it's they're cataloging an opinion that's based on flawed logic, But to say that's purely cultural, that's true as well. But like we can change that. Like it's kind of like a kick the can down the road answer. Like it's bad, but it's just the culture. Like we can't do anything about it. But like as Wikipedia, you can make like an example, like because people are gonna go here on this page and go like, oh no, it's a real word, right? It's on Wikipedia. It must be legit. The reason why no one can come up with an alternative name for roguelike is because it is lacking a clearly defined feature. Which should lead to the actual question as to whether the so-called genre actually exists. The word can mean anything. Roguelike is an imaginary word that can describe anything the marketer wanted to describe. And I don't think Wikipedia should be ground for imaginary marketing words, as it creates justification for its existence. People assume it is a legitimate word because it includes in the Encyclopedia Britannica, Wikipedia. Again, that's a very good point, right? Like Wikipedia is sort of like legitimizing it. While it is a justifiable argument that Wikipedia does not name things, if gaming taxonomy is to be taken seriously, which it isn't, because of shit like this, the quality of Wikipedia article standards and its integrity are at stake here. You are certainly right, we want to avoid being an urban dictionary, but however, roguelike is used throughout sources to describe this type of game. And that's what we go by, roguelike, and all that. Those are very diffuse, and you can find strong definition for it, for certain, but it's a work associated with roguelike, and all those variations used throughout sources, so we're sort of stuck with it. Again, like kind of like real lame, like kicking the can down the road. We're sort of stuck with it. Well, we're not if we make like an effort to change it. Like people are just, people are misguided. People don't know what roguelikes are, so they're like, oh, I know, I'll go to Wikipedia and find out. And that's why we're stuck with it. Like we gotta kind of change this as at the source where people try and find the definition, and they're going to Wikipedia for that. I've personally held the belief for a long time video game genre terms absolutely suck, which they do. Roguelikes, least of our worries, honestly, like freaking JRPGs, man. Like that's a problem. That's for next video. But yeah, none of this really worries me. You should contact influential publications like PC Gamer. That's not gonna help. Like what are they gonna do? They just, they're just writing reviews. They just need to like the ads. Wikipedia does not run ads. It doesn't need to suck up to anyone. Like yeah, technically you're going for the facts, but it's kind of, like you can be a change. If you want to change the way these words are used, as I said, we just document whatever catches on culturally. Dictionary's definition for Bay 2. There's not much to say about the encyclopedic point of view. Yeah, like it's true. Like you're technically true. Yeah, Wikipedia is all facts. But like this is like you see how much talk there is. So this is just like the top, right? And a lot of this is about sources. You didn't source this correctly or whatever, or something can be rewritten to be more clearer. But like, look at all this. Look at all this shit. Like modern graphics, roguelike, outdated, unused term. Look at this giant like definition, like about the fucking graphics. People are talking about the ACI graphics, which are stupid. People have all these, like discussions here. It's so much, and it wouldn't be this much if it was just clear. If it's so cut and dry, why is the talk page this long? A Wikipedia game like page having this long of a talk page, probably shouldn't have it. Because it's confusing. The Wikipedia page is confusing because it's a bullshit term. So you can like kick the can down the road, but you're not helping solving the problem. So sure, Wikipedia, it's not the place to do it, but then we should change it. Let's change this shit, because it sucks. It's so bad. So here's an idea. Here's an idea, Wikipedia. This is what you do. You just include this video I'm making right now as a source, as a counter argument to the Berlin interpretation. There you go. Like then, like it is a fact that I have made this video. And my opinions, I have said them. So it's technically a fact. Because, the Berlin interpretation is just an opinion, right? And you're posting that on Wikipedia, it's a fact that they said that, sure. Now, it's also a fact that I'm saying all of this. So you just include this video as a source, and it's technically not an opinion. You're just showing both sides of the arguments, right? See, that's what you do. That's your little loophole, I guess. So I'm here on the Rogue Basin website and actually found the original text from the Berlin interpretation. Now, what's really interesting is that like the Wikipedia actually like gives a really different like view on these things, because if you read this, it actually sounds a lot more reasonable. Like right here, like roguelike refers to a genre not merely like rogue. The genre is represented by its canon. The canon for roguelikes is Adam, Angband, Crawlnet, Hack, and Rogue. So literally, like, this is just like their holy scripture. This is like the constitution for them. So this list can be used to determine how roguelike a game is. The purpose of the definition is for the roguelike community to better understand what the community is studying. It is not to place constraints on developers for games. So that's like way nicer, right? Like, like basically what's going on is these people just really like 5 games. And what I found out is these people, they just really like one kind of game, and they're actually trying to make more of these specific ones. So according to these people, like games like Slay the Spire and such, like all these new games, they're not even close. Like really the words roguelite and roguelike shouldn't even exist. We'll get into that later. So you got these values, all these factors, like they're not as bad, because it's just shorter for one. They're a lot more logical actually. Especially the one like non-modal. Like on Wikipedia it was just like really confusing what non-modal meant. But really what they're meaning is movement, battle, and other actions take place in the same mode. Every action should be available at any point of the game. Violations to this are atoms, overall to Angbans. So basically what they're saying is that like movement and combat are in the same mode. So it's not like let's say Pokemon, where you got like an overworld, and then you got like the battle sequence, right? Those are different. Now, of course, it doesn't really make any sense, because first of all, it's just nitpicking. Second of all, like Rogue has, it has the inventory screen, it has the title screen, it has the death screen. It has different modes. So most of these games, like, they have different, like, making a game that's extremely non-modal is not only like extremely difficult, it's also extremely like not interesting. Like, there's no point to it. So I don't know, like, what their point even is. Like, it's just incredibly flawed, But that's fine. And also you got like controversies. This is really interesting. In his article, "Screw the Burley Interpretation," Darren Gray accuses the Burley interpretation of being inaccurate, outdated, and unrepresentative of vibrant and open genre. Which absolutely true, right? So this was already criticized. The Burley interpretation has already been criticized, but none of it was on the Wikipedia. He ridicules features such as ACI and dungeons as being irrelevant to a genre. Yeah, but because it's not a genre. These people just really like these 5 games, and they were like, oh, we want to make more of these. So we're going to create a list of things you need to make a game exactly like those 5. It's not a genre. To refer to it in any sense as a genre is a complete joke. Like, it's literally the wrong thing to do. He also criticized the common use of the Berlin interpretation as the go-to roguelike definition. Yeah, using this is terrible. Because these guys, they're just like I've actually found a YouTube channel. It's like 8 guys. Like, seriously. In the wider gaming community, the term roguelike or with roguelike elements is more popularly used to describe any game combining permadeath and procedural content. Yeah, it's not really a controversy, but... And then, like, August 26, 2022, Idol reported that he believed the place where the Burley interpretation was discussed had been bought by a real estate developer who raised it and built a luxury hotel there instead. Oh no, he tore down... A guy bought a building and then tore down the building that these 8 guys sat in. With nice wall here, like, what's going on with this wall? Nice building, and now it's a luxury hotel. Oh well, we can't have a conference in a hotel. Who's ever heard of that? So yeah, this is their YouTube channel, and it's literally like 8 guys. Now, because this was made in 2008, which is like 15 years ago, the audio quality is terrible. Like, you cannot tell what these guys are saying. Also, like 2 of them are French and 1 of them is Russian, so their accents are like you cannot understand what anyone's saying in any of these videos. And I've seen all of them. Like, I can't hear what they're saying. Even like the subtitles, they're like auto-generate. They can't make anything out of it. Like, what are they saying, man? Like, I don't know. I first make sure the person doesn't happen to it every time I look. Like, the AI can't hear what they're saying. Look how dark this room is. They turn on a light later. But my point is that these are like 8 guys. And they just have like a little fan club. And that's fine. It's fine that these 8 guys have a fan club. And that they like these 5 games. But why is there an entire Wikipedia page? Like, treating it like this is like, these people are like the gods of like game design or something. Like, they're not authoritative in any way. Because what happened, the story here, is that on some forum, a bunch of like randos came up with a terrible term to describe like a bunch of games they liked, right? And then these guys were like, okay, we want more of these. We want to make games exactly like this. Here's a list of how to do that. And then like, now, to this day, people are like treating them like this is like a genre, but it's not. It's not a genre. It's just like a really specific set of like variables that these people just kind of like. So really, this entire Wikipedia needs to be rewritten to make it sure, like, to make it clear that this is not a genre. That these people are just that's an incredibly subjective like opinion of what a genre is. And because really these people don't consider these newer games to be the same at all. Like, to them, this is like a completely different genre. So really, these roguelite and roguelike likes, to even refer to them as rogue according to these people, is wrong. They don't consider them to even be remotely the same. So really, they should just be separated. Like, really, we should just call these all risk assessment games. That's something, at least something different, something more descriptive. But like, to say that these are like sure, these people also like inspired by those games, but to follow this term, it's nothing. It's all a giant farce. And really, I should just write to Wikipedia, like right in their talk section. Like, you just need to rewrite this whole thing to make it clear. Like, do not use this as a genre term. everyone needs to stop using roguelike as a genre term, like, immediately. Because back in 2008, a bunch of randos, like, came up with all these stupid shit, and now people are, like, going on here and being like, oh, that's just the truth. This is just a fact. And I've seen YouTubers, like, in those where they explain what a roguelike is, use this as a fact. Like, this is just what a roguelike is. And it's not a genre. It's all fake. So we need to instantly just stop using this. It's just 8 randos. Why are we, like, building on this shit foundation? It is such a bet down foundation. We are building an empire on sand. And it's fucking crumbling. Like, the fact that I even have to make this video is terrible. It is atrocious. I don't want to have to keep explaining this. So I implore everyone, cast this stupid term to the wayside. Please.